Episode 8 or 9?
No, episode 10 now.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, no, you've become the longest running story on my podcast. I think the furthest we've ever got is 6 or 7 episodes. So,
I am grateful. I'm happy I broke some record.
Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name is Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. Today is part 10 of the story of Tariq Maqbool, a man arrested, tried and convicted for a double homicide from 2002. It's a crime he's always maintained he's innocent of. Now, I've mentioned in the past, when it comes to how much I, quote-unquote, investigate these cases, comes from the person I'm speaking with. Some are just happy to tell their story, almost get it off their chest. Some will send me information here and there. And then others open the books and say, have at it. And this is most certainly the situation with Tariq's story. Whenever I start talking to someone for the first time, I always ask who I can speak with. Are you happy with me to talk to XYZ? With Tariq's case, I of course told him that I wanted to try and speak with Andy, Jay, and Zaid. To which he had absolutely no problem with at all. Now, Zaid is actually still incarcerated in New Jersey, in another facility. So I reached out to him a few weeks ago. And he did in fact reply, saying he would be willing to speak with me. However, since then, he has not replied to any of my messages. But I will continue to contact him and hopefully one day he will speak with me. Andy, or Amit Vishal, as we know, disappeared back to India. And I have searched for him. But unfortunately, the names Andy and Amit and Vishal would appear to be as common as Dave Smith in India. So the hunt continues. Then there's Jay, or Jawad Mir. Now, I did some initial searches when I first started talking to Tariq for Jay, but I was coming up blank. Until one day, in the OMR Patreon group, one of our jury members made a comment on one of the episodes about how she'd come across Jay in some searches. The super sleuth jury strikes again. So I sent her a quick message and she told me exactly what she'd found. And it would appear Mr. Mir was doing rather well for himself.
Okay, it's very early in the morning. But I have a number for the American Premier League, where Mr. Jay Mir, or Jawad, is apparently the CEO. Have sent him a message, but he hasn't replied to me. I know he's read it though.
Yes, so we found Jay. He is the CEO of American Cricket League.
I kind of figured that's what I heard, and of course, that man fits his character, yeah.
And he features, well, he doesn't feature himself, but a conversation about him features on another podcast, a cricket podcast, because he called the cops on officials who were saying that, you're not paying us, so we're not going to be involved in the games until you pay us. And they were at some ground where they were sort of, it was sort of like they were on strike almost. And he called the cops on them for blackmailing him.
So he called the cops on them because he's not paying them, and he's...
Yeah, he wasn't paying them. Apparently they flew to this event to be officials at the event, like umpires, I suppose, and all the rest of it. And they get there and nothing's paid for them. They pay for their own hotel rooms and all the rest of it. They were supposed to be reimbursed. So they're like, well, we're not playing until such time as you pay us. And then apparently he comes down and accuses them all of blackmail. And then he calls the cops on them to have them removed from the place.
Thank you for calling American Premier League. No one is available to take your call at this time. However, your call is important. Please leave your name, telephone number, and a brief message, and someone will return your call. Thank you for calling.
Yes, hello, my name's Jack Lawrence. I'm just hoping to speak Mr. J. Meir. Mr. J. Meir for Jack Lawrence. You can give me a call back. My number is... So yes, J. Meir is indeed listed as the CEO of the American Cricket League. I did find Jay online, and so I sent him a message to let him know I was working on this story, and I would love to offer him the opportunity to come on and give his version of events. Now, I know for a fact he's seen this message. And one day I in fact got notified that someone was looking at some of my online presence. And it was in fact none other than Mr. J. Meir. So I would like to just personally put out a call to Jay. If you're listening to this, I would really love to give you the chance to speak about the case. You have my information, so feel free to reach out to me anytime. So, back to the trial. Now, when it comes to evidence in criminal cases, there are all forms. You've got witness testimony, CCTV, phone records, computer records. And when you're talking murder investigations and crime scenes, we see things like fingerprints, blood spatter, DNA evidence. People rarely leave no trace of themselves at these scenes. There's usually something there. Well, in the case of Tariq Maqbool, there was nothing. No DNA that was brought to place Tariq at that scene. No fingerprints, no hair, nothing. However, Tariq says what they did parade in the courtroom to the jury was a Nokia sign. Attached to this sign was a cord they say Tariq Maqbool used to kill Joong. Do we know that the police still have all this stuff somewhere in evidence?
Yeah, they brought it in the trial. They brought that Nokia sign, this big old plastic box. It's a light box. You touch it, you turn it. It's so light you can't, it's not like a heavy box. It's a very light box. Do a fingerprint analysis. You have the evidence in your hand. You said I was in a motel room with all these guys getting all, okay, do fingerprint though. You did not dust anything.
So this Nokia sign is a light box, a sign with lots of glass and plastic all over it. Something you would think should be covered in Tariq's prints or DNA, especially if he grabbed this thing to get the cord from it and strangle someone to death. However, the sign was never tested. So other than the Nokia sign, Tariq says they also paraded in front of the jury this supposed money bag that they say Tariq gave to his then girlfriend to hide.
You brought that bag, they specifically brought that bag. I still remember the color, it was yellow color. And he brought it in front of the jury, this is the bag, and then he pointed in the summation, this is the bag he gave it to his girlfriend to say, which is not true. That was not even the testimony, and I think the lawyer objected, but the judge sustained, overruled it. The point is, I remember the bag's color, it was a yellow color bag. I said, okay, it's right there, it's in a sealed bag of evidence. Take it out, test it. If everything your witness is saying that I did, and your scientific evidence saying no, then we have an issue.
I see this so often that people are put away in prison for very, very long time. Life sentences, even on, I'm talking to a guy at the moment who's on death row. He's been given his date on a case that is just purely based on witness testimony. I always say to, I have an attorney who works with me on this show, and I say to him, I don't understand how a case can be brought against someone purely based off witness testimony alone. Surely there needs to be more than that. You can't just say, well, that guy says he did it. Well, okay, but that guy could be lying. And it's like, well, now we've got two people that say he's doing it, but okay, but their stories don't match. So where is the physical evidence in some form to place this person in that room?
They don't collect it, but my problem with that is very simple. If you do a DNA test on that and this guy's DNA comes on it, then what? The guy who's testifying against me, what if his DNA comes up? And then what are you going to say? I think that's what they're worried about, and I think that's why they don't do it. I was not there. I did not test that money. I did not hurt anyone. And the fact that they won't go and test what their own witness is saying is beyond logic for me.
So, no DNA, no fingerprints, blood spatter, hair samples, nothing. They had nothing to place Tariq Maqbool in that room, except the word of one man. And according to the prosecuting attorney, that was all they needed. It was the most important evidence that they could bring. In fact, this is exactly what he said in his closing arguments regarding the DNA evidence.
And the prosecutor said, and I told you it was page 50 or something, 52 in his summation, he talks about this is not, it's not CSI Jersey City. This is real life.
And I'd like to talk a bit about fingerprint evidence, DNA. And folks, we know, I know you know, this is not a TV show. And boy, are these TV shows popular right now. Almost every night you can watch TV shows about investigations, very dramatic. A lot of people like them. There's always a great big twist at the end. Well, that's TV. And I know that you realize this is real life. And you have to realize it now because you've been sitting on this jury for 2 weeks. You wouldn't want to watch this on TV, not in this form. It would be highly edited. You see how things drag out. This is the way we have to do things. It's the procedure we have to use. Identifying items, putting them in, showing if it's timely, and of course, we always thank you for your patience in it. But clearly, it's not like TV, because no one would sit through that. There's just no way. But folks, let's keep in mind, this isn't CSI Jersey City, okay? This idea that, well, where are the fingerprints? Where's the DNA? Folks, this type of evidence supports testimony. It doesn't replace it. It was crazy to me reading that, to be honest. It was...
I told you.
Mate.
I kept telling you, other people don't believe me.
Honestly, I'm reading that and I'm going, what do you see? Because he's talking about, look, DNA evidence. Oh, what, you think we're just going to find a fiber and wow, case is solved? It doesn't work like that, So I'm like, Mr. Lesniak, I think, was very, very honest about what they were able to do at the lab. Is it possible to get fingerprints from cord? Yeah, he said it was possible. Very, very difficult. It's a thin cord. You'll see the cord. How do you get fingerprints from that? Is it possible to get DNA evidence from that? Yeah, he told you, touch DNA evidence is very difficult. What we really look for is blood, liquids that we can really test. That's what they did test the carpet for. But there's no sign that there was any blood in the office. There was no blood to test DNA for. But keep in mind, folks, that this fingerprint evidence is not the be-all and end-all. Anyone could have touched that cord. I'm sure Paul Reed touched the cord, probably. Maybe Steve Reed touched the cord. The cord was used before this crime, probably for just regular purposes to light the light. You could find a lot of stuff on there. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not a TV show where it's all about finding a little fiber and then, wow, the whole case is solved from that.
I have scores of guys who got convicted off that stuff here.
You've got to hear from people who were there, who could tell you what happened. Forensic evidence supports this testimony. It does not replace it. So clearly, to the prosecutor, DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence, all of that stuff, yeah, look, it's good to have. But you know what? It's not the be-all and end-all, is it? We've got the testimony of the man who was there.
Everything is based on Jay's credibility. If Jay says this happened and this did not happen, that goes against his credibility. If Jay says I touched certain things, I did this, and it comes out completely obvious and bonkers that it's not me, that's the only way I think I can prove the case wrong. Obviously, there's no camera footage, somebody's doing something. So all I can ask is to test the evidence that they do have, which they admittedly did not test, because, in quotes, nobody asked them to do so. I have never seen anything like that in any other criminal cases.
As Tariq's trial was coming to a close and his attorney was getting ready to rest their case, Tariq told her he wanted to get up. He wanted to tell his story. But she says no.
Going through the trial, were you confident that you'd be okay because of the lack of evidence and that, or did you think, I'm done here?
I wasn't. I actually believed that I had to tell my story. I believe that they needed to hear from me. At the end of the trial, when my lawyer was not calling any witnesses, the judge asked me if I wanted to. By law, they have to do it. And I just literally almost broke down. I said, no, because up till then, I was told that I was going to take the stand. They were going to have a mock session, so they're going to prepare me how to take the stand. But they didn't do anything. I mean, I just went to trial that day, and then she's like, oh, we're just going to arrest. I'm like, what? I said, not calling any witnesses? She's like, no, because I don't think they proved the case. And I said, okay. I said, that makes zero sense what you're saying.
Her tact was literally, they have to prove a case against him. So we have to just sit there, with a proverbial thumb up our asses, and that's it. And what I realized is that is the absolute worst thing you can do, because in America, it isn't until you're, innocent until proven guilty. It's the other way around.
Mate,
man.
I believe that everywhere. I don't believe just America. I believe that everywhere. There's no such thing as innocent till proven guilty.
Yeah.
It is completely the other way around. You are guilty until proven innocent.
Absolutely. And, past 9/11, I sat through the jury where every other person was like, nope, he's Pakistani, he is Muslim, he's a terrorist. There are people from Pakistan, they have Taliban. People died. I had an uncle, I had a cousin, I had a friend who died, and in 9/11, and I literally sat through that, and I was like, what the does my family have to do with all that? There are killings. Their history is filled with nonsense from every country and every people. How the hell is it that you're going to blame people, all the people who are not even involved, just the people who have a similar background? And the judge also played, I realized these things at that time, actually. The judge played with the verbiage. So, how a lot of times people would be like, this is Italian-American, this is American-Italian, blah, blah, blah. He refused to call Tariq American. He kept telling the jury, this is a Pakistani. And I kept telling the attorney, we're American citizens. I've been here literally my entire damn life. But she didn't press on. She's like, it's not a big deal. I'm like, no, it is a big deal. The jury who is not speaking to him may think that he's an immigrant who landed here and who did all these things. They don't know anything about this guy. Let him speak so they can hear his accent.
But she said, no, I'm not calling you. And so when the judge asked me, I just froze, and I said, Judge, I need a minute. And he's like, why? We've been in trial for such a long time. This should have been taken care of. And I said, I just don't have a decision. I have to talk to my lawyers. And he begrudgingly gave me a break. We went into a bullpen with both of my lawyers. And I was telling them, I said, this jury needs to hear from me. I don't feel it. I had a bad feeling that this jury needed to hear from me. And so she told me, I don't care what you say, I'm not calling you. So imagine my just issues at that time. I was just so confused. I don't want to fight my lawyers. This is my life we're talking about. And people don't talk about these precarious positions the defendants are placed in. And I have spent so much money on these people. And of course, they're professionals. They know what they're doing. I've never been in the system before. She flatly told me, I am not calling you to the stand. And my other lawyer said, Tariq, you're not getting on the stand. And so I took it as, this is it. We're not allowing you to take it. So I said, okay. I'm not going to fight my lawyers at this particular juncture. So I went outside and did not take the stand. And I regret it till this day. Every single day I've been incarcerated. I think of that day, and I think that my trial would have been different had they actually presented a defense. You have to understand, if you can just for 1 second somehow put yourself in my shoes. If my attorney says, I am not cooperating with you in calling you as a witness, I don't know how to get up there. And even if I get up there, I don't know if she's going to say or he's going to say, I'm not questioning you, then what? Or if I'm going to put them in that situation and they haven't even prepared questions, so they're just going to wing it. And I'm also thinking that, it's going to destroy the case because she has no defense of the strategy, period.
Tariq says that just prior to his attorney resting the case, his second chair, Mr. Beam, would in fact say he thought they should at least get a medical examiner in to look at how the prosecution say Joong was killed, because he didn't believe this theory they were pushing regarding the choking of a wire. So they would call their own medical examiner.
So he told me at that juncture that he had sent out the reports and the autopsy and all that. And he said to me, I don't think it happened the way they're saying, because everybody has, because he had read some of the statements, and he's like, there's so many discrepancies. He said, there's something wrong there. Something is not right. And he sent it out to Dr. Zagaby. He's a Rockland County, New York's medical examiner for the New York State. So he used to testify for the New York prosecutors. And he basically said that there was no evidence of ligature, strangulation, or asphyxiation. He said that the man died because he had a very bad heart. He said there was 90% blockage of his arteries. I think I'm saying it right. And he said any type of exertion, the way they were talking about beating and tying up, and, that could have led to a massive heart attack. My lawyer, Mr. Beam, is the one who said that. He said, Tariq, I think that's what happened. It's like, that's how things went wrong. Something went wrong, and the man had a heart attack, and everything after that just snowballed.
Now let's remember, the accusation is that Tariq Maqbool killed Joong by sitting on his back, wrapping a wire around his hands and strangling him to death, while Joong was thrashing around. This is what the defense's medical examiner said he found in his testimony.
Doctor, were you retained by us to examine the record concerning the death of a Joong or John On?
Yes.
And did we provide you with certain things to examine?
Yes.
Did you also review the autopsy report of Dr. Krolikowski?
Yes, I have.
Now, according to Dr. Krolikowski's autopsy report, what did he attribute the cause of death of Joong On to be?
Asphyxia.
What is asphyxia?
Well, asphyxia means an insufficient amount of oxygen by some means. It could be strangulation, it could be actually from various other clinical problems, like, in other words, lung diseases of various types. Asphyxia just means a lack of oxygen, insufficient amount of oxygen, really, to carry on a normal function of the body.
Did you see any evidence of Mr. On's cause of death being asphyxia?
Well, in a way.
Describe that for us, please.
Well, in a way, because his coronary arteries were very, very high. He had lesions or obstructions of his coronary arteries. I say obstructions, degree of obstructions. He had 90% degree of obstructions of coronary artery, really high, close to where it comes off the aorta. In other words, the higher up you are, if that blocks off, the more heart muscle will die. The lower you are, the less heart muscle will die. In both lesions were very high and were around 90%. That means there's only 10% coming through. Any type of increased activity, not enough oxygen would be pumped by the heart to all parts of the body. That would be a form of asphyxiation.
Did you see any evidence of ligature asphyxiation in what you reviewed?
The photographs that I examined did not show me any evidence of ligature strangulation.
Doctor, I'm going to ask you to take a look at a few photographs. What is that a photograph of?
The deceased, the neck area of the deceased.
Do you see any evidence in that photograph that would show you anything that was consistent with ligature strangulation and the way that I've described it to you?
The way it looks now, it looks pristine, actually. Does not look affected at all. There's no bruising, no furrowing, no indentations. There's no hemorrhage. Now, whenever the defense or prosecution do anything such as look to bring an expert witness to the stand, they have to, of course, notify the opposition. So, of course, when the defense were looking to bring a medical examiner to question the theory as to how Joong died, that meant that the prosecution would bring their expert. Their expert was a man by the name of Dr. Krolikowski. So the guy that the prosecution brought to obviously combat you bringing a medical examiner, was he the actual guy who conducted the autopsy itself?
This is another thing I've been trying to figure out. In Paul's trial, my co-defendants and Steve's trial, Dr. Kolakowski actually came in that, and he said he conducted the autopsies of everybody, both Joong and Munian. Later on in my trial, Dr. Kolakowski came and he said he only did the autopsy for Joong. And then there was another doctor, Lala Perez, who did the autopsy for Mooney. So in two different trials, he had said, in Paul's trial, he said he did both autopsies. He had to lie in one of the cases, in my case or his case, he did not do both autopsies. And he basically said he found asphyxiation and ligature. But he said something specific. He said in order to find the cause of death, because remember the bodies were burnt, he said he studied Jay's statement, among other things. And so my lawyers were basically saying that he made that up after reading the statements. Because Dr. Zagabi said there's simply no evidence that there was any ligature used. So for expert witness to testify, they will have to qualify as to why a person is an expert witness. So if you were a special agent and who looked into fingerprints, you have to tell them basically your resume, I do this, I have the special training
they literally take them through their schooling and what they studied. And
Yeah. So that's the prosecution did, and they brought him up. When he was done, the judge would ask my lawyer, Mr. Beam said, I have an issue, I want to talk to him about this. And he drilled him for that was a good an hour.
So the question is, why did Mr. Beam have objections to the state's doctor? Well, it would seem that the doctor has had more than a few issues in his past relating to his work and credentials. There's this article from May 10th, 2002 from the Sun Chronicle. Doctor punished. A former Sturdy Memorial Hospital pathologist has been reprimanded by the State Medical Board for misreading tissue slides used in prostate cancer diagnosis. The board sanctioned Dr. Joong Kolakowski for incorrectly analysing 3 slides as well as suboptimal readings in 29 other cases. Kolakowski, who worked at the Attleboro Hospital from 1994 to 1998, was also banned by the State Board of Registration in Medicine from continuing to practice surgical pathology. The doctor, currently employed as a medical examiner in another state, can continue to practice other forms of medicine for which he is licensed. Tariq's second chair, Mr. Beam, would in fact bring this up with the doctor, talking about these particular slides. And he says, so according to you, those 3 slides, you either said they had cancer when they didn't, or, maybe worse, didn't have cancer when they did. The doctor replies, the issue was that cancer was not identified. Cancer was present. So people did have cancer and you didn't see it, or somebody didn't see it on the slide that you signed out on. Is that your testimony? My testimony is that I signed out and was responsible for 3 slides.
And he brought up a bunch of stuff. He said your license was suspended, and he was just dodging it.
More recently, a headline that reads, 30 years after Rhode Island woman found dead in apartment, daughter expects new evidence in cold case. Rhode Island authorities found 30-year-old Lori Lee Malloy dead, naked and bruised in her Providence apartment exactly 30 years ago Tuesday. Her daughter, 31-year-old Lauren Lee Malloy, is expecting more answers in her mother's case, as officials re-examine Lori's cause of death after the original medical examiner assigned to her case botched it and concluded that she died naturally. Dr. Kolakowski later had his medical examiner licenses revoked in Massachusetts and Rhode Island due to his inaccurate autopsy reports. Mr. Beam would go on to say, did you apply in Massachusetts to be reinstated and were denied? The board told me to wait to reapply until 2006, I believe. Is that a yes or a no? Was it denied or was it not denied? It was denied. However, possibly the most disturbing of the articles against the doctor is this one. Family sues doctor for taking relative's brain without consent. Surviving relatives of a deceased Alabama man are suing the doctor who performed the man's autopsy for allegedly taking his brain for his own use without permission. Now, in this particular case, no charges were brought against Dr. Kolakowski because, well, a number of reasons. But one of them states that permission from the next of kin to retain an organ such as the brain following an autopsy is neither necessary nor required in the state of Alabama.
And so after all that, he looked at the judge. He said, "Judge, I submit." And the judge didn't miss a beat, bro. He was, it was literally as soon as the words left his mouth, he said, "I qualify him as an expert witness." That's it. That was the end of it. And basically, in Jersey, when an expert witness comes in, autopsies are considered to be, it's a word etched on stone, that type of stuff. And yeah, so that was it.
So Dr. Kolakowski says that he finds hemorrhaging indicating a compression in the neck and compression on the neck area causing hemorrhages. He's asked, "Doctor, within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, what is your opinion as to the cause of death for Joong-an?" Well, based on the microscopic examination of the tissue, which shows the slitting of muscles, fibers and hemorrhaging, it's my opinion Mr. Joong died as a result of asphyxia. Dr. Kolakowski repeatedly says that he sees lots of hemorrhaging, and of course we know that the defence's medical examiner expert says he sees no sign of hemorrhaging. In fact, the neck looks pristine in his words. Now, when Mr. Beam, Tariq's second chair, gets up to cross-examine the doctor, he focuses his attention on the ligature, meaning the strangulation of Joong-an. "Did you find any ligature marks around that neck?" "Well, normally ligature marks in the skin. Since the skin was burned away, essentially I didn't see any ligature marks." "Would you say that the more pressure used, the more opportunity there would be to find ligature marks?" "I think it's a difficult question to answer without knowing some of the other parameters in terms of the material used." Well, let's make it an electrical wire. If it was an electrical wire used, the kind that you have on one of your lamps at home, how about that? Again, depending upon the force used and so forth, and the time involved, then you may see ligature marks. How about if the force used was someone sitting on and straddling someone's back and having that cord wrapped around their neck and pulling very powerfully for a minute, maybe 3 minutes? Well, you could see ligature marks in a general way, I suppose. In a general way? I mean, what does in a general way mean, Doctor? Well, not to get into semantics, when you say powerful, I mean I have no circumstances. You got a guy sitting on a guy's back pulling as hard, very hard. Yeah, you could see ligature marks. You didn't see any of those ligature marks when you examined the remains of Joong-an though, did you? As I mentioned, the skin was all burned off essentially. Ligature marks only stay on the skin? In general, in my experience, it's very unusual to see ligature marks below the surface of the skin. They don't go into the soft tissue of the neck? Oh, they can, but again, I've not seen that in my practice. Okay, so let's quickly break this down. So we have two medical examiners. The state's examiner, Dr. Kolakowski, who supposedly conducts the autopsy of Joong-an. He says that he died of asphyxia. He notes the issues with Joong's arteries, but says that Joong did not die as a result of a heart attack because of the poor arteries. But in his opinion, due to all the hemorrhaging that he discovered at the neck area, he says there is no other way of causing this other than compression of the neck. Now, there may be no sign of ligature strangulation, but that's simple. The body was so badly burnt, you can't see it. When asked, wouldn't you see signs of ligature strangulation under the skin, he says, yeah, it's possible, but in his opinion, highly unlikely. Now, the defense's doctor, Dr. Frederick Zuckerby, a doctor who has been described as a man who literally wrote the book on the subject of forensic pathology, says that he believes that, yes, there are signs of Joong-an dying of asphyxia due to the state of his arteries. However, there is not only no signs of ligature strangulation, which he says you would see under the neck if he died as described by the witness, but also that the neck is, and I quote, actually pristine. Now, some people may think, well, what does all this matter? Well, this whole case rests on the word of one man and his account of what happened. And if he's saying that Joong-an was strangled to death by Tariq Maqbool using an electrical cord as he sat on his back. But yet there is no sign of that actually happening at all, medically. Then what else didn't happen?
You have 1 minute remaining.
And that's all we've got time for. But coming up, the prosecution used a witness in one of the other trials. In fact, the trial against Paul Reed, a witness they chose not to use in the trial of Tariq Maqbool.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me suggest this to you. Obviously, the description she's talking about is not Paul Reed. I suggest to you that was Tariq Maqbool. That's what he told Paul Reed's jury. He vouched for her credibility, and he said, this witness is a good witness, reliable witness, trustworthy witness.
I see where this is going. Plus, you know by now my disdain for the jury system and the fact that most people in that jury have no idea what is going on. Well, it seems this may well have been the situation in Tariq's case.
So he goes like, what's the verdict on the second aggravating factor? So the foreman gets up again and he said, oh yeah, we found him guilty on it. So he said, what was the vote count on this? He said 8-4. So I'm like, yo, he's going with plurality. And I was like, yo, they're confused.
Next time on 1 Minute Remaining. 1 Minute Remaining is a Mashed Pumpkin production, created, hosted and produced by Jack Lawrence, with thanks to special guest producer Alyssa Cook. Audio and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans of Earsay.